Hi, you're on the Reddit Confessions channel. Today's story doesn't begin with a wedding day. It doesn't start with love. It starts with an alarm clock, a locked bathroom door, and the sound of her laughing while texting someone who definitely wasn't me. I didn't plan to knock. I really didn't. It was 7:06 a.m. Lainey's toothbrush was buzzing behind the door, but then it stopped. And then, giggling. Not the kind she used to do with me. No, this laugh had heat behind it. Spark. I hadn't heard her sound like that in months. I knocked once. No answer. I knocked again. Still nothing. And then I heard her whisper. Stop it. I told you. I can't text you when he's home. That was the moment. That was the exact second something inside me cracked so quietly it didn't make a sound, but I felt it. Like bone splitting under skin. You know how people say betrayal hits like a truck? Not for me. It hit like a whisper through a door I paid for. I'm not proud of what I did next. I went to the laundry basket in the hallway. Her phone charger wasn't there, which was weird, because she never charges downstairs. So I walked, slowly, trying not to shake, into the kitchen. Her other phone was in the drawer. I opened it. Locked. Face ID. Not mine. Back in the hallway. She opened the door like nothing happened. Steam followed her like a ghost. She kissed me on the cheek. Cold lips. Cold heart. I stood there, letting it happen. Like an idiot. Like a coward. Like a husband who still wanted to believe his wife was just stressed. But I knew. She said I didn't deserve her affection 2 nights before. I thought it was a fight. A rough patch. Something we'd move past. But now it was a warning I ignored. She left for work early that day. Didn't say goodbye. Took her favorite red coat, the one I gave her for our anniversary. Left her wedding ring next to the sink, without even flinching. And me? I sat down on the cold tile floor, right where she kissed me, and stared at that stupid silver ring like it meant anything anymore. That was the last morning I played dumb. From that day forward, I watched everything. And what I found, it didn't just destroy my marriage. It destroyed who I thought I was. That day, the house felt colder. Not in temperature. I had the heat running like always, but in energy. Her scent didn't linger like it used to. The corner where she kept her boots was suddenly missing 2 pairs. And in the drawer beside our bed, her favorite earrings, the ones I gave her before our honeymoon, were gone too. I didn't want to assume. Maybe she moved them. Maybe she just packed light. But the deeper I looked, the more obvious it became. She had been slowly extracting herself from this life, from our life, like a thief, careful not to trip the alarm. I just never noticed until now. Around noon, I sat at the dining table with my laptop open and a cup of untouched coffee. I clicked open our shared calendar. She had removed several recent entries. Little things, a dinner at my boss's house, a weekend cabin trip we were supposed to take, even the grocery list. All gone. I scrolled through her social media. Nothing recent. Nothing with me. Nothing of us. The only thing she had posted in weeks was a quote that read, "You can't pour from an empty cup." Was that what she thought I was? A cup she didn't want to refill? I went into the basement where she rarely went and pulled out the old fireproof box we kept for important documents. And that's where the next punch landed. Her passport? Missing. Our joint savings account. No longer joint. She had quietly transferred her half into a separate account 2 weeks ago. The receipt was still in the envelope. I couldn't breathe for a second. This wasn't just emotional distance. This was an exit plan. So I did something pathetic. I messaged her. Hey, can we talk tonight? I waited 3 hours. Nothing. Then finally, at 4:38 p.m, she replied, I'll be late. Don't wait up. I didn't. Instead, I waited outside. At 11:12 p.m, headlights appeared. She stepped out of a car I didn't recognize. A sleek black sedan with tinted windows. She didn't notice me in the shadows. She laughed as she said goodbye to the driver, a tall man with sharp features and expensive cologne that hit me even from 15 feet away. She leaned in and kissed him. Not on the cheek. Not a goodbye peck. A real kiss. I froze. My body went still, but my mind, it shattered into 1,000 screaming voices. I wanted to walk up. I wanted to scream. I wanted to ask why, but I didn't. I backed away, quietly, like a ghost. She walked inside, and for the first time in our marriage, I didn't follow her in. That night, I slept in the car. Not because I had to, but because the idea of sharing a roof with her felt like a slow kind of poison. I sat there, parked down the street, and wrote everything down. Every moment, every sound, every stupid detail. It became a habit after that. documenting her double life. But I wasn't documenting for revenge. Not yet. At that point, I still wanted answers. I still believed there had to be a reason. What I didn't know? The truth would be worse than anything I imagined. The next morning, I acted like nothing had happened. She walked into the kitchen wearing that same red coat from the night before, hair still curled, mascara smudged in a way that told me she hadn't just come home and gone to sleep. She poured her coffee, scrolled her phone, and didn't even look at me. I forced a smile, asked her if she had any plans for the day. She mumbled something about a yoga class and left 10 minutes later. I waited exactly 20 minutes, then followed. It wasn't yoga. It wasn't even close. I parked 3 spots behind her outside a little cafe on Carter Street, the one with the ivy-covered brick walls and overpriced smoothies. She walked in alone, but she didn't stay that way. 10 minutes later, the same man from the night before entered. I watched from my car. He placed a hand on her back as he sat. She didn't flinch, didn't pull away. In fact, she smiled wider than I'd seen in years. I hadn't even known she could still smile like that. They stayed there for an hour. I took pictures. Not to post, not to share, just to prove to myself that I wasn't imagining it, that I wasn't crazy. Because when the person you love looks at someone else like that, you start questioning every memory you've built together. When she got back home that afternoon, she kissed me on the forehead like a nurse checking on a patient. Then she went upstairs, locked the door, and didn't come out for 2 hours. I stood outside that door, silent, just listening. No calls this time. No texts. Just silence and distance, and me spiraling in my own skin. By the end of the week, I had collected enough evidence to fill a folder. Receipts, timestamps, photos, notes. And here's the sick part. I still loved her. I still wanted her to walk in one morning and say, I made a mistake. I hated myself for that. For the way I still cared. For the way I still waited for her to choose me. But then came the voicemail. Sunday night. I was sitting on the floor in our laundry room. The only place she never bothered to go, listening to her voice echo off the tile. It was a recording, one she didn't know I had. She had left her second phone in the car that afternoon. It buzzed when a message came in, and for once, it wasn't locked. My hands shook as I opened it, but what I found inside stopped my breath completely. A voicemail. From her to him. I just don't want to pretend anymore. He's so safe. So boring. I feel like I'm living with a ghost. I can't even remember the last time I touched him without feeling pity. She laughed. Laughed. That was the night something inside me died. Not like the heartbreak cliché you read in books. No, something colder. More surgical. I stopped being a man trying to fix things. I started being a man documenting the autopsy of his own marriage. I didn't confront her. Not yet. Because I realized she wasn't afraid of losing me. But she should have been. 2 weeks after that voicemail, Lainey told me she was going on a leadership retreat with her department. A conference upstate, she said. 3 days, all women from the firm. No phones allowed during sessions. She even printed out an itinerary. Color-coded. Hotel name. Workshop titles. It looked official. Impressive, even. But I had already stopped believing in anything she said, because people who tell the truth don't bother creating such perfect lies. So I played along. Sounds exciting. I told her, handing her the travel mug she liked. She smiled, genuinely for once. Like she had fooled me again. But I had already scheduled those same 3 days off work. She didn't know. I let her go. Gave her a warm goodbye. Carried her suitcase to the trunk myself, and watched her drive off with her overnight bag and a carefully packed suitcase full of deception. 5 hours later, I checked into a hotel 2 miles from hers. I had already called the hotel she was staying at, booked a room with a view of the parking lot, and spent 2 days just watching. The first night, she didn't even check in. I sat on the window ledge, lights off, eyes trained on the entrance. No sign of her. The car she claimed she was using never appeared. But at 11:20 p.m., I finally caught her. She pulled up in a completely different vehicle, wearing jeans and a leather jacket I hadn't seen in over a year. She was laughing, again. That same laugh I hadn't heard since before she stopped holding my hand. He was with her. The man from the cafe. From the car. From the voicemail. He stepped out, placed his hand low on her back, and they walked right past the hotel entrance. Around the corner. To the boutique guest house next door. A quiet, romantic place. I followed. Not too close. I waited. Watched them disappear behind a private gate labeled Suite 3. I didn't know what to do with myself. I just stood there, in the cold, my breath fogging the air, my hands numb not from the temperature, but from the realization that she didn't even feel the need to hide anymore. I wasn't a threat. I wasn't her husband. I was a placeholder, someone she'd already left, even if I was still physically in the picture. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in my car writing everything in my journal, not because I needed notes, but because I didn't trust my own memory anymore. Her lies had bent the truth so much. I needed to remind myself what was real, what was mine. And then something shifted. I looked around the room I was in, saw the 2 empty water bottles from the vending machine, the untouched breakfast bar on the counter, and realized I was disappearing. Quietly, day by day, just like she wanted. So I made a decision. If she wanted me gone, I'd give her exactly that. But on my terms, not hers. And not before I watched her burn her entire fantasy down, piece by piece, with her own hands. When I got back from the hotel, I didn't speak a word. Lainey returned the next evening, humming as she carried her suitcase through the door, her voice light like someone who just had a relaxing spa getaway. She smelled like someone else's cologne, not even trying to mask it anymore. She greeted me with a peck on the head and asked if I wanted Thai or sushi for dinner, like everything was perfectly normal. I said Thai. Then I excused myself and went into the garage. That's where I started phase 1. Over the years, I handled all the boring parts of our life. Utilities, car insurance, the Wi-Fi, the streaming accounts, even the rent, all in my name. She liked it that way. Less hassle for her, more control for me. So I used it. Over the next 2 weeks, I began untangling myself from her world. I rented a small apartment across town, furnished, month to month, under a different name. I got a new phone with a fresh number. I set up a digital mailbox in another state. Quietly, without drama, without confrontation, I removed myself from every piece of the shared web we had built. Then came phase 2. I visited the bank and moved my remaining funds to a private account. I canceled our shared credit card. I pulled my name off anything I could, joint subscriptions, backup numbers, medical contacts. I deleted myself like a ghost. And all the while, I acted normal. I cooked dinner. I folded her laundry. I listened as she told fake stories about team-building workshops that never happened. I smiled. I nodded. And inside, I built the quietest escape plan imaginable. One night, she got a phone call while I was in the kitchen. She thought I couldn't hear her, but I could. She whispered, "He's still here, but not for long. He'll fade out eventually." Then she laughed. That laugh again. It hit me harder than anything before, because it wasn't anger in her voice. It was boredom. She was waiting me out like you wait for a candle to burn itself down. But I wasn't going to fade. I was going to disappear so completely that one day she'd wake up and realize she'd built her entire life around a lie. And now the man she discarded without blinking had pulled the rug out from beneath her feet. I started storing things at the new apartment, clothes, documents, backups of every message she ever sent to her secret number. And I kept a file. I called it the departure. Every day, I added to it. Her schedule, her patterns, her dishonesty, her words. I wasn't planning revenge. I was planning an audit of her life, of our marriage, of the image she sold to everyone around her. Then came the night that triggered the final phase. She came home late again, this time drunk. She dropped her purse by the door and mumbled something about how I never did anything exciting, and that maybe she needed a man who wasn't so afraid of being ordinary. She passed out on the couch before I could even respond. I looked at her for a long time. This woman, who once promised to grow old with me, had slowly carved me out of her world, thinking I'd never have the guts to walk. But I wasn't walking. I was vanishing. And when I left, she'd realized that control doesn't mean anything when there's no one left to manipulate. It happened on a Friday. The apartment was nearly empty by then. I had already moved 80% of my stuff to the new place. Not that she noticed. I had replaced clothes with similar ones. Left old pairs of shoes while taking the good ones. The shelves still held books, but the ones that mattered were already packed away. I left just enough behind to keep her illusion going. Just enough to stay invisible while I slipped out of the life she clearly didn't want me in anymore. That evening, she came home earlier than usual. She was quiet, which was rare. Her voice usually filled the room before she even took off her heels, either humming or complaining or pretending to care how my day was. But this time, she dropped her purse, looked around the room, and asked, "Did you do something in here?" I shrugged. "Just vacuumed." She stared at me. "No, it feels different." I smiled. Not a fake one, a real, calm smile. I said, "Maybe you're finally noticing things." That night, I left my phone on the counter with the screen lit, unlocked, and accidentally displaying a folder full of photos I'd printed, ones I had taken of her with him. In the cafe, outside the guest house, kissing in the parking lot. I went upstairs without a word and waited. It took 15 minutes. 15 minutes of silence before I heard her heels clatter on the floor. Then the sound of paper being picked up. Then breathing. Not her usual shallow kind. No, this was deeper, uneven. Like she had been punched in the gut. Another 10 minutes before I heard her slowly walk up the stairs. I expected shouting, tears, excuses, but she didn't even open the door. She just stood outside our bedroom and whispered, "Where did you get those?" I didn't answer. I just laid back on the bed, eyes open, waiting. She opened the door. Her makeup was smeared, hands trembling. Her voice cracked when she spoke again. "Ellison, please." I didn't mean. I sat up slowly, looked her in the eye, and said, "You don't need to explain. You were right. I don't deserve your affection. And now, you'll never have to worry about giving it again." Her knees buckled. She sat on the floor, actually sat there, like someone had unplugged her from reality. I could see it hit her. The realization that I wasn't going to fight. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to cry, or scream, or plead to fix us. I was simply done. She asked, "Is there someone else?" I almost laughed. The irony. The projection. The desperation. I shook my head. "No, just someone I'm starting to remember how to be." She cried harder than I'd ever seen. But I didn't feel anything. No anger. No pain. Just peace. That night, I didn't sleep on the couch. I didn't leave the house. I stayed in our bed alone. She slept on the hallway floor, sobbing quietly, thinking I couldn't hear her. I heard everything. But I had finally stopped listening. Because the truth was, her affection used to be everything to me. And now? Now I wouldn't take it back even if she begged for it. A week after she found the photos, she was different. Softer. Too soft. She started texting me during the day again. "How's your morning? And should I pick something up for dinner?" Like she could glue our shattered pieces back together with small talk and Thai takeout. But she still didn't bring up the man. Not once. She never apologized. Never asked what I knew, how long I'd known it, or what I planned to do. She was hoping to wait it out. Rewind time. Reset everything. But I wasn't standing still anymore. I had already scheduled the dinner. She thought it was just a quiet evening at home. I told her to wear something nice. She came downstairs in that green dress I used to love, the one she hadn't worn in years. I could tell she put in effort, the way she curled her hair like she did in the beginning, the way she smiled nervously, like she was trying to charm me back into forgetfulness. We sat at the table. Candles. Her favorite wine. Homemade risotto. She looked at me like she didn't recognize the man across from her. Calm. Collected. Empty in all the ways she used to manipulate. And then the doorbell rang. She looked confused. "Are we expecting someone?" I didn't answer. I walked to the door and opened it. Her parents stood there. Behind them, my sister. Behind her, our mutual friends, Derek and Alina. One by one, they filed in. Each of them holding a copy of a sealed envelope I had delivered earlier that week. Inside those envelopes, a printed letter from me. For pages. Titled, "The Truth You Deserve to Know." It included photos, timelines, screenshots, everything I had collected over the last 3 months. The lies, the fake business trips, the restaurant receipts for two, the hotel check-ins under her name and his. And most painfully, her own words from the voicemail, typed out in black and white. Lainey stood frozen as everyone entered. She tried to speak, but her mother put up a hand and shook her head. My sister walked past her without looking. Derek and Alina sat down on the couch in silence. I could see it on her face, the realization that the mask she'd worn so comfortably had finally cracked. She turned to me, whispering in disbelief, "You invited them?" I answered quietly, "They deserved honesty. I gave it to them. You gave them lies." She looked at the table again. The wine, the candles, the meal. It all hit her at once. This wasn't a dinner of reconciliation. It was her farewell. I didn't yell. I didn't scream. I simply stood there, letting the weight of what she'd done unravel in front of the only people who ever cared about us. That was her punishment. Not humiliation, not revenge, but exposure. She didn't just lose me that night. She lost the version of herself she built in everyone else's eyes. She stormed out of the house 20 minutes later. Didn't take her purse. Didn't say goodbye. Just silence and slamming doors and the sound of a woman watching her entire story collapse. And me? I stayed at the table. I finished my wine. For the first time in years, the food didn't taste like ashes in my mouth. Because the ghost she thought I'd become? He was already gone. She didn't come home that night. Or the next. I never asked where she went. I didn't need to. Whatever world she ran off to, with her charm, her lies, and her fantasy of being the victim, she could keep it. I had my world back. Or at least, what was left of it. 2 days later, I slid the final envelope into our mailbox, the divorce papers. Clean, prepared, and already signed. I didn't need closure. I just needed peace. I left a simple note on the kitchen counter. No need to talk. Everything you need is in the envelope. I won't be back. I walked out of that house, our house, and never looked back. The funny thing is, you always imagine leaving will feel dramatic, explosive, emotional. But for me, it felt like quietly setting down a weight I didn't realize I'd been carrying for years. No more pretending. No more wondering. No more waiting to be chosen. In the weeks that followed, I rebuilt. Slowly. Quietly. I didn't rush into anything. I read books I had long forgotten. I made scrambled eggs at 2 a.m. just because I could. I reconnected with my brother. I took walks in silence. I started sleeping through the night again. And one day, I laughed, really laughed, over coffee with a friend who didn't know a thing about Lainey, who only knew me as I was in that moment. Flawed, healing, but whole. I won't say it was easy. I won't lie and tell you I didn't miss the comfort, even the twisted kind. But I will tell you this, she was wrong. I did deserve affection. I did deserve loyalty. And most of all, I deserved the chance to start over. She tried to erase me with distance. I erased her with peace. And that, in the end, was more powerful than anything she ever expected. Thank you for following this story through to the end. If you made it here, I hope it reminded you that walking away isn't weakness, it's wisdom. Now I'd love to hear from you. What's one historical moment that showed someone quietly taking back their power and changed everything? Drop it in the comments. You're watching Reddit Confessions. And remember, your story matters.